Hi, welcome to the channel. So, most people are aware that there were 6 days of creation, day 1 being light, day 2 the firmament, 3 plant, etc., with the 7th day being God's day of rest, commemorated by the Shabbos, but there's a much lesser known fact in Jewish tradition, sourced in the Talmud and books of Pirkei Avos, that there actually was a bunch of really specific things created on the 7th day, just before Shabbos started. So, I think that's more than enough of an intro. Let's get straight into it. Here are 15 things created on the 7th day of creation. Number 1. The Pit. Famously, during the events of the Book of Numbers, Moshe, as he led the Jewish people through the desert to the land of Israel, ran into a bit of an issue. Several issues, actually, as it turns out, but the relevant one here is that Moshe's first cousin, a guy named Korach, decided to get jealous of Moshe and felt he should be put in charge instead. So he started a whole rebellion and caused a bunch of issues, splitting the Israelites in two and leading a sizable faction against Moshe and his leadership. They challenged Aaron and his priesthood, they made their new laws and rules, and all around did a bunch of wrong things, until apparently God decided that enough was enough, and a giant pit split and opened up beneath Korach and all his followers, swallowing them all and having them all fall while actually literally straight to hell. So, it's said that this giant chasm was pre-prepared quite a while earlier, and I guess held in abeyance until the time was right from the eve of Shabbos on the 7th day. Number 2. The Well. Similarly, as the Israelites traveled through the desert, they were supplied with water from a well, which miraculously spewed out of a rock in honor of Miriam, Moshe's sister. Moshe would later whack that rock and have a bunch of problems because of that, but whatever. In fact, each sibling had something given to the Israelites on their behalf. Miriam, the well, and her two brothers, the clouds of glory, and also, well, I guess this brings us up to number 3, the mun. The manna, which fed the Israelites as they traveled, it took the form of small, white, pearl-like grains, which fell from the sky in piles outside of each person's tent in amounts proportionate to their family size. In fact, a double serving would fall on Friday, as they wouldn't gather it on the Shabbos, and it said that it tasted like basically whatever you wanted it to. So that's another thing created before the first ever Shabbos on day 7 of creation. Number 4. The mouth of the donkey. Bilam was a sorcerer and prophet in biblical times who was hired by a king to create a curse against the Israelites in his attempt to destroy them. Side point, there's actually a really interesting point in the Talmud where it mentions he timed his curse towards a specific instant in the day, the one instant in the entire day where God gets annoyed at the Jewish people, kind of mad at them, and if you want to curse someone, apparently you should do it during that time, although when that time is, I have no idea. It does mention some options, but it's not too relevant here. Anyways, ending of the event was that Balaam went out to curse the Jews, and he instead spoke a blessing. But the point relevant here is that as he traveled to do this whole thing, he rode on a donkey and was accosted by an angel, which he couldn't see, but his donkey could. So then he started hitting his donkey, and the donkey started speaking to him, reprimanding him for everything he was doing. So the donkey's mouth, to allow it to speak, was created in advance too. Number 5. The rainbow. I'm guessing that most of you know what a rainbow is. I assume this one is being a reference to the first one, after God flooded the entire world, sparing Noah and his family in an ark, and when they eventually got out, God showed a rainbow as a sign of his covenant to never again destroy the world. In fact, actually, in Judaism, a rainbow is seen as a bad sign, as it said that that's God's way of saying that he would have destroyed the world but for the covenant, reminded by the rainbow, and there are some sages who are complimented with there not having been any rainbow seen during the entirety of their lives. Oh, whatever. Point is, this rainbow was also made on day 7. Number 6. The Staff of Moses. This is a bit of an odd one. Moses had a staff, of course, but there's actually a whole bunch of information and lore dotted about the entire Talmud and Torah and a bunch of sources about this one particular object. For one thing, apparently it used to be owned by Adam and was passed down before eventually someone stuck it into the ground where it couldn't be removed by anybody until Moshe, who had just fled from Egypt to become a shepherd for a period in the land of Midian, prior to his returning with 10 plagues, drew the staff from the ground, being the first to be able to do so, and then performed a bunch of said plagues with the staff. If this bears some similarity to a certain Arthurian legend, which I guess it kind of does, then, well, yeah, I guess that's a thing. Also, the staff was apparently made of sapphire and engraved with a bunch of letters in Hebrew, which spell out the first letters of each of the 10 plagues. Number 7. The Staff of Aaron. So, Aaron, Moses' brother, also had a staff, this one a bit less remarkable, but during the event of the whole Kairach situation, as some challenged Aaron's priesthood legitimacy and status, they decided to conduct a test of a sort, and gathered all of everyone's staffs together. Then they checked on them the next day, and Aaron's staff had sprouted with almonds and flowers, so that was also pre-made, and the staff was actually stored inside the Ark of the Covenant, along with a few other things. Number 8. The Shamir Worm. So, I actually literally just made a video on this, going over the entire story involving it, King Solomon, and the King of the Demons. Pretty interesting event all around, but to basically summarize, it was a worm that would split any rock that it was placed on, and was used for the construction of the first temple in Jerusalem, as they were forbidden from using any metal tools. It was placed in the ownership of an angel, the minister of the sea, who lent it to a bird, and who had it stolen from him by King Solomon, and then had a whole fight with it with the King of the Demons, and at this point no one knows where it is. Number 9. The letters. It's the letters of the Hebrew language. Hebrew holds a special significance, as, unlike most other invented languages, Hebrew, according to tradition, was made by God and has immense intent and complication behind the design of every single letter. If you want to understand that any better, try reading Sefer Yetzirah, an ancient Kabbalistic work going over the meaning behind every single letter. Apparently, according to tradition at least, it was written by either Adam or perhaps Abraham, but yeah, letters were made, and in addition to those is number 10, the writing. I guess this is just an extension of the prior, that one being the letters themselves, and this being language as a whole, but it seems to be pretty self-explanatory. So that one brings us up to number 11, the demons. Again, somewhat self-explanatory and mentioned a lot more in that above-mentioned Solomon video, but yeah, demons, malignant spiritual entities, were made on the 7th day of creation. Number 12. The Grave of Moshe. No one knows where Moshe's grave is. He passed just before entering the land of Israel with his people, alone on a mountain. It's one of the few biblical characters of import that no one knows where his grave is, unlike, say, the forefathers or the foremothers or a bunch of others, but apparently it too was pre-prepared. Number 13. The Ram of Abraham. Abraham was told to offer his son Isaac as a sacrifice to God as a test, and very nearly followed through with it until, surprise, at the last second he was told not to. So Abraham turned and saw a ram stuck in a bush and decided to offer it instead. So once again, apparently that ram was made early on the 7th day. Number 14. The Garments of Adam. People generally tend to portray Adam and Eve as naked up until the point where they sin, when they have like a fig leaf on or something, which is odd because it says that they were wearing clothes made by God, a special skin-like layer, like an additional layer of flesh of a sort. So I guess this too was made early. And this brings us up to the final entry on the list, which is number 15, the first pair of tongs. The logic being that if you want to make metal tools, which people did, you need tongs, but tongs are made out of metal, so you really can't just make those without tongs, so God just decided to make the first pair of tongs to resolve this. And that's all of them. I thought this was a pretty interesting topic. I hope you enjoyed the video and maybe learned something new. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great night.